in my opinion, is arcane and antiquated. It's sort of tacked on to the popular vote process between when the votes are cast and counted and when the official winner of the election is certified and ultimately inaugurated, right? And so what Trump and his advisors did was they found all these steps in the electoral college process and they tried to figure out a way to undo those steps or interrupt those steps or subvert those steps in the process. And so when you talk about like the fake electors, that was just a parallel reality that they built where they wanted to believe they wanted to keep open this idea that Trump really could have won the election and they were going to have these fake electors. And ultimately, the fake electors became a pretext to obstruct the joint session of Congress on January 6th, you know.
Yeah. I yeah. The so one of the projects that I have is hopefully coming to completion. Is I wanted to make a long video, kind of explaining everything that happened. And it's funny because you're saying things that are things that I've exactly said. That January 6th is not really that important. Like that day, it was everything leading up to that day that was so crazy. And
I mean, I
that
think it was the culmination. I mean, it
yeah.
certainly was important. You know, I mean, it is. You know, I mean, I know you probably have debated people. I hope you're,
Mhm.
by the way, recording and just I don't. You know, you can record everything I
Oh
say.
yeah.
Yeah. Look, there are a lot of people who try and minimize the violence from that day, or they try to minimize the actual madness of that day. And to me, that's really what January 6th is about. Is about a
Yeah.
political sickness,
Mhm.
a madness that the crowd that has no right to be. He has no right to summon a mob to Washington and tell them to march on the Capitol. We can get into what he actually did tell them and didn't tell them, but
Yeah.
um,
I didn't
you
mean
know,
to. I didn't mean to say that the day was irrelevant. Just that,
right.
like, it's yeah, like you said, it's the culmination. Like, if I really wanted to explain how horrible J6 was, that's going to be the day itself is the least I'm going to talk about. It's going to be all the stuff leading up to it.
Well, I mean, you
Yeah.
mentioned like the fake electors, and one of the things if you go through, so if you go through the sort of the how that part of the scheme, I mean, one of the ways to think about this, and other people have used this analogy, so it's I'm not original in saying this, but one of the ways to think about this is like a spoke and wheel scheme. You know,
Hmm.
so there are different spokes on the scheme, the January 6th wheel, so to speak, of how to overturn the election, and one of them is the fake electors. You know, that's one of the big ones, and it's integrated into the other parts of the scheme. One of the things that becomes clear from the record is that the fake elector effort, the people who are actually schemed it up, really dreamt it up and came up with it and put it into action, knew it was all about obstructing the certification of Joe Biden's victory on January 6th, right? There was no other real legal or political justification for the fake elector effort. This is a key point that was missed in a lot of the commentary on this, because a lot what you'll see sort of lawyers argue, well, in case Trump somehow did win one of his one of his court efforts in one of the states, and they overturn the outcome, then they need to have the electors ready just in case of that event, so that way they could be counted. But the people who actually came up with the scheme, that's not what they were doing, right? The evidence is that they put it in writing. We know that they weren't counting on any court decision overturning the outcome in any state. The fake electors were purely about obstructing Joe Biden's victory on January 6th. That's what it was all about. And there were different ways they could be implemented or used on January 6th, but that was what it was all about.
Yeah. Just as a quick aside, my stream for this is live, so you know it's not pre-recorded.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't know that, but that's fine.
yeah. Just let you
That's
know.
great. Well,
Um,
hi to everybody out there.
yeah.
I didn't doing
Yeah,
live
you're
stream.
good.
That's fine. Yep.
I just want to say that just in case. And then on the second thing, yeah, the one of the frustrating things, and I don't know if if you argue, you mentioned that maybe you've argued with people in real life about this. It's frustrating because people they'll simultaneously justify like an insurrection or a coup, and then they'll say it didn't happen, right? They'll say things like, well, the fake electors, I mean, like they were never going to actually use these, of course not. But they had to have them because the election was stolen and the states weren't doing anything about it, and they needed a way to, counter these things. And it's like, okay, wait, so it sounds like you're justifying Mike Pence basically choosing the president, right? Because you think it was a stolen election. Like, well, no, like not like that. Like they always like play both sides of it. It's very frustrating when you
Yeah.
argue with people
So
about it. Yeah.
you're talking about the cognitive dissonance, and I've dealt with this quite a bit. I mean, they can have, it's the same thing where they'll say, well, it was all deep state set up because they wanted Trump's patriots to be tricked into storming the Capitol and attacking police, so that way they could, crack down on them. But by the same token, it wasn't really that violent, and there really wasn't anything that happened that day that's really a concern. I mean, it's the same type of cognitive
Yeah.
dissonance, right? And a big part of it, we can get into this if you want to talk about it, but my whole theory of what actually has happened here is that Trump, more than any other political figure in my lifetime, really did harness the power of the conspiracy web, the conspiracy internet.
Hmm.
And what you'll find is that, if you study conspiracy theories, there are plenty of conspiracy theories that have like a handful of facts that are interesting or a handful of unknowns, and then they kind of apply all this thinking or assumptions on top of it to turn it into a conspiracy theory, right? And a lot of times those are nonsense and they don't really add up either. But a lot of times conspiracy theories at least have something or some fact somewhere that somebody's glomming onto, right? What you're dealing with the conspiracy web is a rabid conspiracism. It's just a reflexive belief in anything that's anti-establishment, anti-government, anti-media, anti-democrat, anti-this, anti-that. They're just willing to believe anything. And so, you can have people to this day. I mean, you just saw in Pennsylvania, I think it was in Pennsylvania, Elon Musk got on stage and was repeating the Dominion voting systems,
Still.
smear. Yeah, still. I mean, let's talk about how stupid this is, right? I mean, this is a guy who's posting videos on X of rockets being, you know, brought back to Earth and systematically put back in their silo. Pretty cool technology, right? Reusing the boosters and that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. That's far afield for me, but it looks pretty cool to me anyway, right?
Mhm.
But he's doing all this kind of cool tech stuff, and meanwhile, he's repeating one of the dumbest conspiracies about January 6th and voting in our country. I mean, if you're a prophet of high technology, which Elon Musk is with Tesla and the electric cars and these rockets and everything else, how can you be this stupid to believe or to go forward with this? It's not even a theory that Dominion voting systems are there's something suspect about them. I mean, vote machine technology is about as simple as it gets, right? I mean, you're counting votes, and we have the paper ballots. And oh, by the way, in late 2020, when these myths were being spread online, they actually hand counted the ballots in
Yeah.
places like Antrim County, Michigan, across all of Georgia, right? And what did they find? That the machines were accurate.
Mhm.
And here's this guy repeating this nonsense to this day. And by the way, hand counting is less accurate than machine counting. You can figure out why that is. But so this is what is Elon Musk doing? I don't think he's dumb enough to believe this, or maybe he is, but I don't think he is, right?
Mhm.
I think he's catering to the same sort of audience online that really is willing to believe anything. There's this well of credulity out there.
Yeah, the one of the big things that I talk about, and it sucks to talk about it because it's like when you say misinformation is a huge problem, everybody says that, but like half the people that say it are the ones that are the worst perpetrators of misinformation. And
Right.
I think one of the things that surprised me coming into, when I was like, okay, I'm gonna read the whole 840 pages of this J6 stuff because let's see, I don't. I think I was arguing with a friend over did Donald Trump abdicate his duty on J6. I'm like, I don't know. Was it really his responsibility? And it was a huge argument we had there where I didn't think it was that big of a deal. That kind of was the inciting moment for me to read the whole thing. And the thing that surprises me is usually when you've got stuff like this, you're relying on like a sequence of events that's really hard to explain without a conspiracy, or maybe like deposition or testimony from like one person that's like, oh, that's kind of worth looking into. This stuff there's an abundance of
Right.
so
Right.
it's so
Right.
much. It's so much from
Right.
from conservatives, from Republicans, and
Right.
the other side is not denying any of it. It's like,
I mean, yeah, I mean that's exactly right. I mean, well, first of all, it happened all in front of our eyes, right? I
yeah,
mean,
that
so
too.
it happened on live TV, right? And January 6th is the actual that day, the events of that day, including the attack on the Capitol, has to be one of the most recorded events in human history, including by many of the rioters who recorded themselves, quite clumsily, going into the building or attacking cops or whatever.
Hmm.
So the idea that there's some big mystery to solve here is pretty stupid, right? I mean, you've got all this evidence right in front of you. You can see it with your own eyes. And you have to be, but the bottom line is, right, you have to want to believe that what you saw with your own eyes didn't happen, right? You have to want to believe some other explanation for all this, and that has to do with the human mind and really the flaws in the psychology, and how the human mind works or doesn't work, because
Hmm.
you can amass dozens and dozens of facts, and show something is wrong, and you won't get anywhere. I mean, one of the most frustrating things to me, and maybe you've encountered this. I don't know. You could tell me, but is when, my view is, I know that my brain is not, perfect, right? That I make mistakes in thinking and I make mistakes in sort of how I assess things, but I try and correct them, right? I try and figure out what's going on and figure out how I got things wrong. What I've encountered when it comes to this type of thing, when it comes to January 6th or related issues, right, is that somebody will state something. You can show them definitively that it's false, like the Dominion machines, somehow switching votes from Trump to Biden, right? And you can show them that there was a hand recount. You can show them, exactly what happened, and they'll either just wave it away or they'll move on to the next lie, right? They'll move
Yep.
on to the next thing, and without ever questioning. Well, wait a minute. I just believe something that's definitively wrong, right? But I'm willing to believe the next thing just because I want to, and that's really, I think, a lot of what's going on.
Yeah,